All right, guys, it is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024, and I've got a Coca-Cola here somewhere. I don't know what I did with it. Anyway, good news. Check this out. Look at that. It looks awesome, man. It's the perfect texture, perfect sheen. So the way I did it, really good budget way to go. If you guys are wanting to do a bedliner coating in your cars, if you put enough on it inside the trunk, the wheel wells and all that stuff, in the inner floors, on the floorboards on the inside, and did the hole underneath the car, it would kind of help as a sound deadener as well. Wouldn't be as good as Dynamat, but it's still going to help, because I know from personal experience it worked for me. On a car I was driving every day, I redid the trunk, but I actually had done it at a bedliner shop that I worked at, and it was a night and day difference. When I pulled out and got on the turnpike, I was like, oh my gosh, it's quiet in here, and all we did was the back of the trunk on the inside. But anyway, for you budget guys, and this is where I always point my videos toward, is the guys on a budget, because that is me. It's the way I've been all my life. I can't afford to go out and buy a nice car to tear it apart and redo it. I have to buy junk and build it up. That's why it took me 10 years to build my car. And anyway, I just don't have the money to build a car in a year or even 2 years. I have to stretch it out to be able to afford to build the car. So anyway, you other guys that are budget, if you don't want to spend the $250 or whatever it is on the 4-bottle kit of Raptor liner, which to me is the best, that's my preference, is Raptor liner, hands down. But if you wanted to go on a budget, still get kind of the same effect, you can buy a gallon can, like at Walmart, the roll-on or brush-on bedliner kit. And that's exactly what this is. But you can use you can go to Harbor Freight and get a cheap, gun for that. I can tell you what I did one time. I took the gun and hose out of my bead blast cabinet at one time and actually used it to do bedliner shooting on, and it worked fine. But those guns are normally pretty cheap. You can probably find a blasting gun or something. That's pretty much all it is a blasting gun, to put it blunt. Anyway, I have a shoots gun, a rocker shoots gun, if that's what you want to call it, but it's actually the one for Raptor. It's a U-POL, U-P-O-L brand. I want to say that thing was like 20 bucks or something, not very expensive. But it especially made for those little bottles to screw onto for the Raptor liner. The Raptor liner, you get hardener and you take the lid off the bottle. There's 4 bottles, and you take the lid off and you pour the hardener in there, and then you screw the cap back on it, you shake it up, and then take the cap back off and you screw it to the bottom of the gun, and then you can use it. But this stuff, you can just run a hose off the bottom of the shoots gun. I used a 3-foot piece of hose, rubber hose, like fuel line hose or whatever I had over there, and just run it right down in the can. They have that little metal handle, little wire handle on top of that gallon can, and I hold on to that can, but in between my fingers I run the hose down there into the bottom of the can. I hold the hose down in there and the can at the same time with my left hand, and then you have 3 foot of hose that you can work all kinds of different directions however you need. So anyway, it also is a good way to keep from getting drips and that type of stuff, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm just saying, for budget you could do that. But Steve's trunk turned out awesome. Now here's how I got this effect, and I already had a guy yesterday argue with me that I shouldn't, because I mentioned in the video I shoot this stuff at 120 psi, and he goes, that's too much air pressure. It is not, if you can see by that. So let me just tell you why. So when you add hose to the end of that, like in my case a 3-foot hose going down into that really thick heavy bodied stuff, it takes a lot of air to get suction to pull that up there to it. The other thing about it is, I think what he's thinking about is he's kind of trying to compare it to clear coat. Like if you use clear coat in a car, if you put 120 psi to your spray gun with clear coat, you'd have a fog in here. It'd look like the garage was on fire. It would be so heavy in here. But on this heavy stuff, it works, man. It just works. Do be sure and put a little, like a toilet paper, little filter on the end of the gun so you don't get any moisture from your compressor on there, because if you got moisture in there, it's probably going to make it hard to dry. But anyway, you can see by the lack of, which I unmasked it, but you can see there's just not a lot of overspray. So this stuff is really heavy bodied, and it stays in a nice little pattern. It doesn't come out in a big wide pattern like a spray gun, but it works awesome, man. It worked good. But this is how I did it. I did one coat, one full wet coat. Now on the can it said to wait an hour. It probably depends on each brand, but that one in particular said to wait an hour. And then I come back out here after an hour and I shot another heavy coat on. And then after I waited about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I come back out and I held the gun way back and just kept hitting that trigger real fast and just kind of fogged it, just let it kind of fall, dusted it basically, and let it fall down on there. And what that does is it's your texture coat, and it takes the high gloss out of it and gives it the satin or matte sheen. I personally don't like high gloss bed liner. I like the matte or satin finish, and when we were doing professional bed liners at a shop I worked at with the Real Deal machines, that's also what we did, and it really makes a huge difference. But you can see by the texture, it's not real heavy, but it's not fine like an aerosol. It's perfect. But you know, the trunk's not 100% perfectly straight or anything, but I did so much hammer and dolly work on it that I'm pretty amazed that it turned out as nice as it did. But it looks awesome, man. Except the previous shop's 3-inch wide strip of seam sealer there. It was a little excessive, but anyway, you can see my seam seal lines from where I taped it off. You can see a nice crisp edge there. I think it looks really nice. But the trunk floor is real tight, so I'll give you a recap on what I did, because there is a ton of hours. When I figured up my hours yesterday, from December, I think 11th or something, 8th, 9th, I don't remember, until today, because I have come out and worked on it here and there the last couple of months, but just not enough to really make a video or anything. But anyway, when I added everything up, I was pretty blown away by how much it took to do it. But this trunk had so much stress in it. There was so much work I had to do. This car's been hit in the rear over here, and they replaced all this, like the tail pan and the quarter, I guess, or inner part, whatever, but they didn't replace the trunk floor. And to me, that's the first thing. When this car was on a rotisserie, they should have changed the under brace back here and that trunk floor, but they didn't do it. So anyway, that I you know, hammered and dollied everything out. I had to cut this panel out right here. Now that was when I was trying to get the gas fill tube to work in the car with the gas tank moved over, because they flipped the leaf springs on the car and had to move the tank over, and it wasn't very good quality fab work that they did. But this was all crushed down real bad, and this was caved in. The whole trunk floor was bent downward, and it was oil canning. They also put a thin piece of sheet metal in here without any beads or anything in it, and they perimeter welded it out on the edge. So it was just thunk, 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 thunk. You don't want to do that, because when your car is idling, it will cause a vibration through the car, and this will just sit here and vibrate and make a low rumbly sound. It's terrible. It will drive you insane. So anyway, I put thicker metal in here. Steve actually is the one that rolled the bead in it. I guided it through, but he done the crank on the bead roller, and he hated it because this was pretty thick stuff. It was kind of funny. But anyway, I drilled holes all the way around it, plug welded it, and I added these bars in here. This is strap steel, and the reason I did that was to make this all straight and level, because this panel is lower than the rest of the trunk, and also it has this bead up here, little press fit square in there from the factory. There's another one there. But anyway, mounting a battery tray here for a battery box and all that stuff, if the car was ever in an accident, the bolts could just pull right through the sheet metal floor. So I added these to keep that from happening, because the gas tank's back here, and if you have an accident, you don't want sparks and a gas tank next to each other, you know what I mean? So this will be a really good support for that. But anyway, when I welded the bars in and plug welded them in, I put some all metal on the ends here and just de-8 it off. But it looks like it's all pressed out as one unit, and the trunk floor is very stout. Now what I ended up doing was I put a floor jack underneath the back of the car with a 2x4 on it, and I jacked up like right in the center right here, and I jacked that thing past the point of being level. I jacked it way up until it was domed. Then I let the jack down, and it still had just a slight dome to it, and then I ended up going back in and hammer and dollying this piece and then butt welding it back in. And then I put this in, but by the time I was done with all the other hammer and dolly work I did in the whole floor, it's got its strength back now. So now it will support a full tank of gas. But it was a lot of work, man. The worst part was underneath the car. There's a ton of work under the car because I had to remove all their crap that they had under there and then grind off all their crap, their welds and stuff after I cut all the pieces off. And then I had to take all the brackets from the 56 four-door parts car. I had to remove them from that car, clean them up, blast them, and weld them in this car in the stock location. So it was a big job, man. I can tell you I don't really like that I ended up using the 55 one from his car back here because I had this off. This is original. This one's from the 56. The 55 has a pressed piece in the middle and this one does not. The other 56 one I did remove it, but it was so heavily pitted on the bottom and one corner was gone. I didn't want to use it, so I ended up using Steve's original. This one was wasted. It was mangled because the car took an impact and it just accordioned all of this up in here. But you know, anytime that happens, you're going to have all that stress in there and you're going to have a lot of loose metal back here because it just stretches it out. But anyway, today I'm going to coat the bottom of the trunk, but I got to wait until my wife leaves from lunch. She's not even here yet. So when she leaves, I'm going to back my 55 because I'll put it all the way out there at the street so I don't get any overspray on it. This doesn't really put out a lot of overspray, but the wind's blowing today and I don't want to take the chance. This stuff's heavy enough. It would probably get on it if it's right here, but it's not going to get on it out there. But anyway, I had Steve's car completely covered up yesterday, but I did bring the sheet back in that I used on the back because the wind could have blew it away. Those two moving blankets are pretty heavy, so those stayed there overnight. But anyway, guys, I'm happy with it, man. It turned out awesome. And it's a positive because, you know, finally over that hump. However, I am going to coat the bottom of the trunk today, and then the car at that point is ready to be put on the chassis. So I'm going to be using a brand new set of polyurethane energy suspension body mounts because I don't like the rubber mounts. They squish. When you tighten the body down, some of them go a little bit lower on the edges than the others, and it's just, I don't like them. I like the urethane. The car stays where it's supposed to be. So the problem that I have is it's toward the end of the month and I am broke. I mean, putting it bluntly, I have $7 in my wallet. I need to go buy one more 4x4 post at Lowe's and one concrete block because I ended up breaking one of my concrete blocks that I used to lift the body up with, and one of my 4x4 posts that I usually run across the rockers. It had a split in it before, and when I went out to get it earlier, the split got wide and it's corkscrewed on the end, so I don't trust it to put the body on. So I need to go get another 4x4 post and one more concrete block, and I don't think $7 is going to get it, you know what I mean? So anyway, I've pretty much spent my limit at the end of the month, if you know what I mean. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Hopefully, well, I know I'm going to get the bottom of the trunk floor coated today, so, and that up there turned out great, so I know it'll turn out great on the bottom. And then hopefully get the body put on the frame, and then at that point I can finish all the forward brake line stuff. I've got a fab, bend, flare, all the front brake line stuff for the front. I've got the rear brake line run up the frame rail toward the A-arm up there, but I don't have it all the way forward. But once the body's on the frame, I can finish all that because the master cylinder and everything's already mounted to the firewall. Then I'll get a hold of Jim, have him bring the engine, and I can get it prepped out, get it painted body color. Then I need to put a new front pump seal and a tail shaft seal in the transmission, and then I can mate those two together, set them in the car. It's pretty much downhill from here, and man, let me tell you, I'm glad of that. So I know you're probably tired of hearing me talking, but I do like to over-explain things. I like to go into great detail because if I don't, a lot of people ask questions. But you know, there are some people that they don't want to watch a 30-minute video, and sorry, but I like to explain things in detail because, believe it or not, there are people that watch my videos to try to learn something. Not saying I'm a professional builder or anything, but if something works for me, I'll pass it on to you guys. And I always try to save money, you know what I mean? So that's a good thing. Thanks for watching.